Cedar Lake, Michigan, and I'm a student at Southern Adventist University. My grandparents are Ann and Daryl Hoyt, so they're the ones that invited me here to share with you this morning. But I'm excited to be here. I've been to this church a few times before, and I love it. So, if you wouldn't mind, if we could just bow our heads for prayer before I begin. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you for this good day. I thank you so much that it's your Sabbath and that we have a day to rest. I pray that you will be with me now as I share with your congregation the words that you have for me to share. We love you, God. In your name, amen. Well, Chad. What is Chad? Most people would ask, who is Chad? If you're not familiar with it. It's a country in Central Africa, just to the east of Nigeria, to the west of Sudan, and right south of Libya. And it's a big country. It's about the size of 2 Texases put together. And I was attending Southern, and I decided that I wanted to take a year off after I gave my heart to Christ, and I decided I wanted to take a year off to serve Him and go wherever He sent me. And so I was looking at different places I could go and different calls that were available, and Chad came up, and it looked like a challenge, and it looked like some place that I could get away from distractions, TV and video games and all that stuff that clouds my mind, and it looked like a place I could go to find God and to learn a lot. It was a call to do construction, which I didn't really know a whole lot about at that time, but I wanted to learn, and so I took it, and I went to Chad. I had a 11-hour flight from Detroit to Paris, and then a 6-hour flight from Paris to N'Djamena, which is the capital city of Chad. Let's see, okay, let me go back. Oh, too far. Okay, so when I first arrived in Chad, this is kind of what Chad looks like, but when I first arrived in the capital city, the capital is a little more developed, westernized. You know, you see not just huts like where I was living, but you see buildings, and because there's rich oil people that come through there. So the capital city was a little bit nicer, but it still seemed pretty awful to me compared to being in the States my whole life. In the airport where I arrived, there were grasshoppers everywhere in the airport, about 4 inches, 3 inches long, just smushed on the floor and on the walls, crawling around, and so I wasn't really used to that. And then everyone seemed to be sporting the body odor, everyone, and so it just kind of hit me in the face when I got off the airplane, and I think as time went on, I kind of became a part of that smell myself, but at first it was really irritating to me. But this is outside the hut where I lived. After the capital city, I took an 8-hour bus ride south to Bere, Chad, and that was where the project was. That was where I was going to be living and working. I had the opportunity to live with a local family, a Chadian family that spoke French and Nangere, which was their local language, no English at all. They would come up to you and say, "I am fine." They didn't know how to say, "How are you?" Some of them did, but most of them would just say, "I am fine," and so you'd say, "Okay, good." But I was able to get into the culture and the language while I was there to be able to speak with them. This here is actually the bathroom outside of my house. They built it for me because before I came, they had no facility for that type of thing. And so this is the bathroom that they built for me. Inside, you can see there's a brick there covering the hole, and that is my bathroom. And you can imagine that's not the most comfortable spot, especially when you're dealing with parasites and dysentery and all sorts of other fun things that I had while I was over there. I noticed right away when I was there, it was quite the culture shock because it was so poor, and I just couldn't believe that people live like this. You know, you see pictures and videos and things like that, but it just doesn't do it justice. You don't really realize it until you go there and you see that these are real people with personalities and families, and they laugh and they talk and cry just like you do, but they're living like this. And that's everything that they know. A lot of the people had never been out of the village that I was in. They had never seen any of the cities, and so that's just what they knew was the village. Here's a little boy, Adonijah. He was one of my neighbors, and you can see he's cutting a mango there with a really large kitchen knife, which isn't safe for a 5-year-old, but you use what you have in Chad, especially the locals, but even us, we learned to get by with whatever we had. There's no nice plastic Fisher-Price knife for him to pick up at the Toys R Us, This is whatever he finds, whatever's available in the market is what they use. And we did the same thing. This is myself and my missionary supervisor there, Jonathan Dietrich. We were headed out into the bush with the welding generator there, which we had strapped to this little cart made with bicycle tires and such. And we just hooked it to the back of the motorcycle with some bungee cords. And it worked like a great trailer. We ended up using it all the time like that. And so we got to use the things that we had and just make do with them too. It was very hot. You can see this ox here getting some shade, some relief from the sun. When I first got there, it was actually, things were rather green, and it was actually just humid, not extremely hot, but as the time wore on, the dry season came. We didn't see rain for about 7 months while I was there. I was there for 8.5 total. Just got back a month ago from today. But we didn't see rain for 7 months of that time. And towards the end, it was getting up 115, 120 degrees Fahrenheit. And so when it gets that hot, you just got to find some shade. You got to quit working. We did a lot of roofing, sheet metal, and so you can imagine the reflections from that coming into your face. You get sunburn inside your nostrils, and so it was very hot. I wasn't used to that, especially being from Michigan. We don't really know what that's about. Here's some of the kids playing. This is the type of entertainment that they have over there. For the adults, it's sitting around and talking with each other, getting to know each other, building relationships. For the kids, it's just whatever they do, playing on a tree, playing a little game in the dirt, wrestling. There's no cell phones to text on. There's no Game Boys or TV, anything like that. It's just no electricity for them. You go into town, into the market, there will be a few generators around, and people will be running refrigerator, whatever they found. But out in the village where I was, about 2 miles from the market, it's just simple life like this, and they're so poor, so they just play with whatever they find and with whoever's around. This is who I lived with. This man is Pierre, and that's his wife, Clarice. And when I first moved in with him, I said, "Oh, well, how old are you?" He has about 8 kids, and he says, 30 or 40. That's what he said when I asked him how old he was. So no one there, except for the very educated people who come from wealthier families, no one knows how old they are, what year they were born in, when their birthday is. They don't celebrate that. I think to them it's kind of like they don't see it as a celebration as we do. So that's Pierre. He was such a great man. There's a lot of kind of dishonest, shady characters in this country, and I was really blessed to find this man to live with. And I didn't really know a lot about him when I first moved in. He went to our church out in the bush, but that's really all I knew. He just seemed friendly, and I needed a place to stay, and so I moved in with him. I paid him about $2.50 a week. Sorry, that's not right. $2 a day. There we go. That's what it was. And this was big for him because his wages, average wages, are $1 a day. That's what he's been living on for his whole life. And so I tripled his wages there for him just for letting me stay in one of his rooms and cooking for me. His wife cooked for me while I was there. This is what Pierre does for a living part of the time. A few months out of the year, he makes bricks when it's not raining. During the rainy season, he works the rice fields that his family owns. But he makes these bricks, these mud bricks. He made about 10,000 of them in a few months. And it's really hard work, and it's an intense process to watch. I was able to help him with that a few times and kind of learn from him. And this is kind of a bad picture because it's at night, but that's when they fire the bricks. You can maybe make out the big pile of bricks there with the fire underneath. They make gaps underneath it to put the sticks and light the fire, and then there's charcoal placed throughout the bricks that fires them. And they end up turning out red and harder than they were before. They're still not very solid, but if you build a house with it, it'll last for 10 years instead of 5, so they fire their bricks. This is the horse. Some members of my church in Cedar Lake pitched in, and we were able to get Pierre a young horse that he's going to raise, and it's going to, well, he was already riding it around before I left, but he's going to plow with it. He's going to transport all kind of things with it, with a cart, and that's going to allow him kind of to have a better life. He's going to be able to make a little bit more money and to be able to work more efficiently. So that was kind of like our parting gift for him, and he was so excited and so thankful, and he didn't know what to say. But I guess all the neighbors were telling him that God had really blessed him by bringing me to live there with him. So I was happy that God was able to use me in that way. This is right outside of my house where I lived, and that's where I slept. You can see my grass mat laid up against the grass wall, which Pierre made all of those. He weaved them out of the grass that's there when it's green, and then it dries. And so I would set that mat down on the dirt there. First I would pour water on the dirt, and that would cool it off a little bit because the ground would be so hot. Then I would put my grass mat down, lay it down, and then drop my mosquito net. And the only problem with the water was that it attracted lots of scorpions, so pretty much every morning I would find 2 or 3 scorpions under my mat, so I would have to kind of step back and then smush them with my feet. But yeah, the mosquito net was really helpful. There was a lot of mosquitoes, and they're malarial mosquitoes. And so I used that almost all the time. There was a few weeks when I kind of neglected using my mosquito net, and I ended up getting malaria. So I learned my lesson from that. It was a tough time. I lost about 13 pounds in 8 days. Very sick. But I recovered, and I'm okay. That's you can see that chair there. That's where I would sit down. They would bring me my food, and I would eat. Or sometimes they would come in and eat with me, depending on if they had other visitors over or not. Okay, here's my dog. I decided to get a puppy while I was over there, keep me company, someone to speak English with, since no one else understood. And she was really great. She's definitely like half hyena or something like that, because she was a wild dog. I mean, she was so friendly to me, but you get any visitor coming in the fence at night, and man, she would just go crazy and attack them. And I don't think she ever bit anyone, but she got kicked quite a few times by various people who were coming in. But she was a really sweet dog, and she would bring a lot of things, presents, such as this lizard's head to me. She also brought me a whole skin of a goat one time. Don't know where she found that, but it's her way of saying thank you for feeding her. She would just eat whatever I was eating. I would just give her some rice or whatever I had. I'll get to that in a minute. Here's a monkey that would play with her every day. There's a lot of monkeys around. They're wild, but this one was actually a pet of some of the missionaries that were there. It's a crazy little animal. I hated it. If there's one thing that I don't miss the most about Africa, it's that monkey. It's just awful. We'd be out on the job site, and it watches you. It watches you while you're working, and it looks for what's important to you, what's valuable to you, and that's what it takes and runs away with. If you're using a marker a lot, the minute you put it down, he'll come up behind you so you can't see and grab it. And he'll just watch you and see what you're using. And if you act like you're mad at him for taking it, then he'll look at you right in the eyes and he'll just run with it while looking at you. But if you act like it doesn't matter, he'll just run with it a little bit and then he'll drop it. And so we learned that that's what we had to do. But he's a horrible monkey. One day I'd written a long letter to someone, and it was in my backpack. And I was up welding up on some rafters, and I wasn't looking out to see where the monkey was. And when I came down for lunch, my backpack was open, and this letter was just out and shredded and strewn around everywhere. And I was so upset. And the monkey was sitting there by my backpack just looking at me, just waiting for me to do something. And so, anyways, I chased the monkey down. I had to pretend like I didn't want to chase him to actually grab him. And then I brought him over to the pump well, and I held him under it and pumped water on his head for about 30 seconds while he cried. Yeah, I know, it's kind of mean, but he upset me. But he never learned, so I didn't do that anymore because he didn't learn anyways. He just kept wanting to do it more. Maybe he liked the shower, I don't know. But you can see my dog's trying to take a nap, and the monkey is just being a pest, just looking in his ear, and horrible pet. This is my friend Kumakoi, and you can see his hands wrapped up, and you can't really tell on the screen, but he had charcoal on his fingers because he had just gotten stung by a scorpion. And thankfully I never got stung by a scorpion while I was there. I had one run across my leg one time, which scared me pretty bad, but they say that a woman that I know had her foot stung one time. She said the pain was worse than childbirth, so this particular scorpion that we have there. So I never want to feel childbirth or a scorpion sting. One of those I think I'm pretty set on. But I went to visit him, and normally we'll shock them with a motorcycle battery. If they had just gotten stung or bitten by a snake, we can hook them up to a motorcycle battery and shock them, and it neutralizes the poison and takes away the pain. It works a lot better than anti-venom. But this was about 3 hours after he had gotten stung, and so he just had to deal with the pain. But I went over and hung out with him for a while and his family. This is Clarice, my Chadian mom. She's making me some rice there, which was always full of rocks and sand as well. Of course, it's the rice from their own rice field, so they sift it and clean it, and they don't do a very thorough job because they don't have any really good equipment. They just use plates and whatever to try to get the rocks and sand out. But so there's always a few little crunchy minerals in there for you to enjoy. My dog there obviously is waiting to see if she can get any. But this is what I would eat most of the time. It's kind of hard to tell what it is, but it's a ball of rice that they would squish into this bowl and then turn over. And so it made a little ball, and then you grab it with your hands, eat with your hands, and then you dip it in this delicious sauce. Doesn't that look good? I didn't think so at first. Anyways, it's made out of leaves and peanuts, peanut oil, kind of just whatever they can find around. There's also this white rock that they dig out of the ground, and they put one of those in every sauce that they make. I don't know what it is, but I lived, so I'm okay. But we would have different kind of sauces. Sometimes they would bring me stuff they have one that everyone calls snot sauce. And I think the reason that it has its texture is because they put, almost said it in French, okra in it. And so when you dip your rice in, you have to pull it up, you have to get on a ladder and keep going up until it breaks off. I would joke about bringing scissors, to the table to cut the stringy stuff. So that was not my favorite. Eventually I learned that you have to wrap it around your hand and just not be afraid to get it on your fingers, but I didn't like snot sauce. Here's a breakfast that they give me. Those are two fried balls of dough which doesn't really sound good to me now at all, but when all you've had is boule and snot sauce for a few days, they start to look pretty good, along with those hairy carrots that were just pulled out of the ground. Really good. That was a good breakfast. I remember that. Mangoes. We had a lot of mangoes. Ton of mangoes. I think you'd be walking down the road. Everything's seasonal in Chad, and so every food you'll get for a month or two, and then it's out. So first we had guavas. We had quite a bit of guavas, but the mangoes were so abundant. Everyone, they get a week off of school to eat mangoes. And you'll be walking down the road, and a little boy will hand you like 8 mangoes just as a gift, and there's a lot of little boys on the road, so they'll give you a lot of mangoes. We learned to walk with a basket a few of these times, and we filled them right up. But half of them are rotten when the little boys give them to you, so you got to be careful. But we would eat probably 5, 6, 7 mangoes every day. Most I ever ate was 12. That's the girl. Her name's Danny. That she went with me on the mission trip. She's a good friend of mine. But she ate 20 mangoes one day, and she didn't feel very good the next day. But we also had different kinds of mangoes. We had one that was about this big as a football, and the pit was just tiny. So it's all fruit. It was really good. Okay, so some of the stuff that we did, the work that we did while I was over there. This is when I was first there during the rainy season before it got dry. This is the road that goes through the rice field. You can tell it's knee high. It got up to waist high at one point, and we just swam. But we were going to build a one-day church in a little town called Congo. Way out, we had to walk through about 5 miles of this, and it was really tiring. And when we got there, we built this one-day church. I did 3 one-day churches while I was over there with the project that I worked with. This is the first one that we did. You can tell everything's green at first. It was nice, but there was a lot more mosquitoes and weird bugs that would fly into your mouth when you're on the motorcycle, so I kind of liked it better when it was dry. But we actually put these up in... We actually put them up in 2 days because the first day we would cement in the wall posts, and that way it's more sturdy since they have a lot of dust storms and weird wind storms and things like that. So we did it actually in a day and a half. We'd start the first one evening and then finish it the next day. And this is after, the day after. There's me on the right. You can tell I wasn't feeling good. I'd spent the night throwing up and other fun activities. Someone brought me some strange guinea hen to eat, and of course I had to try it, and so I dealt with the repercussions from that. Danny did not eat it, and you can tell she's happy because of that, but I didn't really learn from that. I should have. This is what I had to take because I got giardia from that experience, and that's metronidazole. It's a really nasty pill. It's not coated like the pills you get here. You taste it, and it's horrible. And everything that you eat tastes like that during those 3 or 5 days that you have to take that. So there's me working at the airplane hangar, which is where we worked most of the time. Yeah, you can tell something's missing from my face now. I know, it's sad. But I did a lot of cutting, fitting, and welding steel on the frame of the airplane hangar. And this is inside the hangar, and you can tell we were just starting to put the roofing up. We did a couple clear sheets so we could have some lighting inside. But that's up there is where I worked a lot of the time, and God really, really protected us. We had a lot of times where we almost fell or slipped or got shocked, and we didn't fall, so we would pray every day for protection. God really looked after us. This is another one-day church that we worked on. This is one that was right across from my house, and the Cedar Lake Church actually paid for this one. I heard that you guys sponsored a one-day church recently too, and man, they're such a great idea. They're easy to put up, and they're really strong. We have a container with about 30 of them over there, and I think they've put up 7 total, so there's still about 23 churches left. It's just really hard to find people that can maintain a church once you put it up. But that's my friend Yaga helping me. And the power drills, they were just amazed by. They just had no idea what it was. They thought it was a gun or a pistol. And so when they would learn how to use a tool like that, they would drill a screw and they would look up to see if all their friends had seen, how cool they are using the drill. The community and the church members really got involved, helping put up this church, transporting bricks, and those are actually bricks that Pierre made that we got for the church. And there's Pierre helping transport some trusses that I had made the day before. We made them over at the project, and then we towed them over. It's about a mile in this little push cart. And we transported them over and just put them right up one afternoon. And that's the church. You can see it's about halfway roofed. We're working on the rest of it. And it's just really cool how everyone comes out and helps and wants to, hand up the roofing or just do whatever they can. Let's see. Here's the first Sabbath in that church, and I got to do. This was right at the end of my stay there. I got to do Sabbath school. I talked about God's love, and I got to do it in French, which I couldn't have done when I first got there, obviously. All I knew how to say was bonjour, but living with people that speak French, and that's all they speak, I got to learn it while I was there, so that was a cool experience. I was also kind of a nerd. I always had my little pocket dictionary in my back pocket, so if I heard something I didn't know, I would look it up, and that helped me to pick it up as well. That's my friend Aaron. He's a really good friend of mine. He was translating for me into the local dialect. I actually heard that he had 2 really cute little twin baby boys that had just gotten born while I was there. Anyways, I just heard since I've been back that one of them passed away from a sickness, which is very common there. We were attending funerals almost every week, every other week. People that we worked with would die, and so that kind of gives you an appreciation for the life that we have over here and the health care. This is another church that we did. Obviously, there's no structure there, but we met under a tree every Sabbath afternoon, and we would tell Bible stories and sing songs with some kids, and there were some adults that came as well, and they were really excited to get into it and hear about God, and they just loved having us there because that's the only thing that they get like that, hearing about God. They have a church over there called the Evangelical Church that's very active. It has a lot of churches, but if you go to one of their services, they just sing really loud and dance kind of inappropriately the whole service, and that's their church service. And so they were glad to actually hear like some sermons and stories and learn about the Bible rather than just dance away the day. I got to do an evangelistic campaign while I was there, 10 days, one of which I was sick, so I didn't do, but the other 9 days in a row, I preached on just various Adventist beliefs and trying to present it to the people in a good way. I think we had about 250 people that attended every night, and we had, I think, 4 or 5 decisions for baptism afterwards. And so that was kind of a stressful time for me, preparing and doing that every day. And it was also a 30-minute motorcycle ride there and back every day. And so I got a little sore in the rear from doing that every day. But it was fun driving the motorcycle anyways. This is the hospital inside the children's ward. And this was about 2-3 miles away from where I lived out in the bush. So this is a little bit more towards the market, more towards the town. And the reason I have a picture of this is because I spent a lot of time in there. Pierre, the man that I live with, his little daughter, she got sick while I was there. And so He couldn't afford it, but I insisted that we took her to the hospital, and we hospitalized her there for a week. She had malaria and she had amoebic dysentery. She was only 14 months old. She'd never walked or crawled or anything like that. I would always hear her in the other room while I was trying to sleep. I would always hear her throwing up or crying or something like that. So I said, man, she's sick. We got to take her to the hospital. So we took her there for a couple weeks. She got looking a little better. Took her home for a week, but then she started looking really sick. She's the cutest little girl ever, but it's really hard to see her suffer. She started looking really sick, and so I said, hey, we got to take her back. And they said, no, she needs to rest, let her be at home. And, they don't understand that really that hospitals are a good thing. They just think it takes your money. But I was like, listen, I'll pay. No big deal. It was only they treated her for so many different diseases, fungus and parasites and everything you can imagine, malaria twice, and I only paid $120 for 3 weeks of hospitalization, which is nothing, compared to what we pay here. So I was like, no, this, no big deal at all. I'm glad to help, but they could have never paid that. The most money they would have at one time would probably be $20, and that's a lot for them. So I paid for her to be hospitalized here. She was very sick. I have a picture of her here. Sadly, that's the only picture I can find of her. I know I have some others somewhere, but I need to find them. But this was maybe in the last week that she was hospitalized there, and finally she got so sick, and they said it was a virus that they didn't think that they could test for or treat there in Chad. And so they said, well, we'll just send her home, and sorry, there's nothing else we can do. And so we loaded her on a motorcycle with her mom and sent her back to the village, and she died on the way. She was dead at home when we got there. So I got really close to her while she was healthy, and so that was definitely a hard period for me while I was there. She's like my sister. But it was comforting in a way to see her at the end of her suffering. But all the suffering that goes on over there, it really hit me hard, just because I'm not used to that here. We have all kinds of ways to cover up suffering and disease here, to make it seem not as bad, and all kinds of treatments that prolong our life and make the symptoms not as bad, so people can't really tell that we're hurting. Everything's made up and covered up here, but over there it's just raw. You see all the pain, all the illness. Someone breaks their arm, there's not necessarily something to give to them. You just set it and you watch them scream, and but it helps them. And so you really see the effects of sin and what the devil's trying to do, and it brings the great controversy and everything like that to life. And it's just my closing slide, but it really taught me to realize how blessed I am being here in the States. I have a car, over there. If someone has a 1970 old Toyota truck that's all rust, they're rich. They're the richest person in town, in the village. So it really taught me how blessed I am, and how if I've ever thought I was poor at one time in life, I wasn't. I'm still blessed by God, and so it taught me to appreciate everything He's done for me, and it inspired me. And hopefully I get to do some more mission work in the future after I finish college. But thank you for listening today. I'm glad I could share with you.